What's up, YouTube? James MTG Biggie here, and today we are doing a first ever for this channel specifically, and also for me as a Magic player. I've never, ever done this before, so get ready. And what I'm talking about is I brewed an EDH deck, Commander. The new Commander decks are coming out at the end of this month, and I thought, you know what? I could build a deck. Why not? So I gave it a shot. And where I started was an archetype I love. I play Legacy Death and Taxes. I play Modern Death and Taxes. If Death and Taxes becomes a deck in Standard, I'm going to play it. Thalia is an amazing creature, and I thought maybe I could try to make Death and Taxes work in Commander. So I've never really built a Commander deck from scratch, and I've played maybe, like, I could probably count on one hand how many games of Commander I've played, so it's difficult for me, but not too bad. So here's what I came up with. First of all, before we get into it, I used this website, EDH REC, or EDH Rec. They have a tool where you can choose a commander, and then they tell you what the average deck consists of, a bunch of cards that usually go in decks with it, and lands even that work for that commander and stuff like that. So it's actually a very handy tool. So I started with Thalia, because that is the kind of poster girl of Death and Taxes. This is the card you play the archetype for. And then it gave me all these different creatures and enchantments and instants and sorceries and stuff that kind of work well with Thalia, or that people have played before with Thalia. Now, I didn't want to take a direct list and adapt it. I wanted to start from scratch, but this is a good resource to give me some ideas. And also, you could click view average deck, so you could see what, like, a random average Thalia deck looks like, which is fine. But like I said, I did use this as a resource for some stuff, because I'm not going to remember every white hate bear type creature there is. And I actually, there were some that I didn't know about, or I forgot about, or I missed out on, or I just wouldn't have thought of. So, and actually now that I'm here looking at it live in this video, I forgot about one. Glow Rider. You want this guy in your deck because it's like a third Thalia after Windwing Mirror and Thalia. So you're not going to see it in the list that I go through. Find a slot for it. My bad. So apologies ahead of time. But anyway, getting into it. Here is the EDF and Taxes H deck. I thought it was clever. Shut up. So we have 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28 planes. Lots of basic planes is awesome. Consistent man is great. I recommend it for everybody. I have 3 fetch lands, an Arid Mesa, a Windswept Heath, and a Flooded Strand. I know that this is an combo with Leonin Arbiter and Aven Mind Sensor, which we have in here someplace. Although Aven Mind Sensor may come out for... Actually, yeah, let's do that. Aven Mind Sensor is not in the deck anymore. Glow Rider is in the deck, okay? So the Aven Mind Sensor in there is a Glow Rider. Anyway, it's an combo with Leonin Arbiter, I get it, but we're playing Crucible of Worlds. So I wanted to be able to abuse that, because we're also playing with Crucible Strip Mine, Wasteland, Ghost Quarter, and Tech Edge. So we're playing 4 land destruction lands. Because we're playing one ofs, we can't just have 4 Wastelands, so we have to get cute with it and improvise. I also considered playing Dust Bowl as a 5th. I don't think I need it, but because, like, you're not going to be as effective at destroying people's lands when you're playing against 3 other people, but I like having the ability to recur these lands and start blowing up mana bases whenever you can. So it gives a little bit of value with the fetch lands as well, and kind of thin your deck a bit, whatever. And then we have Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx. We're not really abusing the devotion mechanics so much, but we do have some ways to dump mana quick So if we can make a ton of it, just why not play it? You know, we're not purposely trying to get a high devotion. We're not playing like Heliod or anything like that. But we can use the mana in a few places. And we are taxing things with Thalia and stuff. So if we can make a bunch of extra mana on top of taxing non-creature spells, and we can cast our non-creature spells, it works pretty well together. Eiganjo Castle to protect our legends, not only our general Thalia, but we have Bremaz in here. We have the bigger Thalia. There's a handful of legendary creatures in the deck. Then Emeria, the Sky Ruins, or the Sky Ruin. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 7 or more planes, you can put a creature from your graveyard into play, which is awesome. Especially in a format where you're getting to play all of these turns. You're going to get the 7 lands. And that's it for lands. Other mana stuff. We're playing Sol Ring because it's EDH, and you have to play Sol Ring. Pearl Medallion. White spells cost one less to cast. Can kind of counteract our Thalia, taxing stuff like our swords and stuff. And the Swords of Plowshares, that is not the sword equipment. And then Oketra's Monument, which I thought was actually really interesting. It makes your white creatures 1 less to cast, and you make tokens, 1/1 Warrior Vigilance tokens. We have Skullclamp in our deck. I didn't want to go bananas with a token theme, but we're playing Skullclamp, and having disposable white creature tokens to draw cards with Skullclamp with is pretty sweet. We also have Bremaz that makes tokens, and I'll get into it later on. We have another token producer that I think is going to be really good in this deck. So that's it for the mana. Getting into the 1-drops, we have 3 of them. Thraben Inspector, Weathered Wayfarer are all-stars in the modern modern Death and Taxes deck, excuse me. Mother Runes is a staple in any Death and Taxes deck in Legacy. You have to have 4 of them in Legacy. We only get 1 here, but we have some other creatures that kind of have a Mother of Runes-like effect. Leonin Arbiter, I mentioned a bit earlier, does not synergize with 3 fetch lands and some other searching stuff we have going on, but you know what? It's still pretty good. I think other players are going to search their deck a lot more than we are. And then on to Spirit of the Labyrinth, another good 2-drop. Each player can't draw more than 1 card per turn. If you're playing against some degenerate blue decks that are trying to cycle through their hands or play a bunch of Wheel of Fortunes and stuff, this card's amazing for stopping that. And then Phyrexian Revoker, another classic in every Death and Taxes deck since Death and Taxes has been a deck. In a format pretty wide like EDH, it has a lot of targets. Even if you come down with it and name Sol Ring, it's pretty good. So, it's got to be in there. Containment Priest, I don't know if Reanimator or Show and Tell decks or anything like that are a huge thing in EDH, but if they are, I'd like to be prepared. Imposing Sovereign, I didn't know existed, but it's just a 2-drop that does what the big Thalia does and makes your opponent's creatures come into play tapped. When you're playing a bunch of 1-ofs, it's cool to have very similar effects on multiple cards, so it's like you're getting a pseudo 3/4 of in certain things. And that is an ability that I think is pretty solid to have. So in addition to that, we have, like I said, Big Thalia, and I think 1 more 4-drop that does a similar effect. Aethersworn Canonist, great hate bear, great sideboard tech in Legacy Death and Taxes. Anybody who's trying to combo off can't, basically, so stop storm decks. Selfless Spirit, protect our guys against sweepers, a good 2-drop body, and just a really versatile card. Helps us out a lot. And late game, if we can recur it with that land and whatnot, pretty solid. And then we have Grand Abolisher, which makes it so your opponents can't do stuff during your turn. Can't activate artifacts, creatures, or enchantments, or cast spells. So another way to make sure you get to play your game and they don't get to play theirs, at least on your turn, which is nice. Stoneforge Mystic, we have an equipment package here. So Stoneforge, although we don't get 4 of, we do have several ways to blink it, and fetch again and stuff like that. And cheating equipment into play too, with Thalia taxing our non-creature spells. Pretty solid. Then we have Aegis of the Gods. You have Hexproof. So 2-drop 2/1 that allows you to not get murdered by burn spells or by getting stormed off on and getting tendrils out of a game or whatever. Stops discard spells. Everything that your opponents are going to want to do to you after you annoy the hell out of them with a bunch of white weenie guys. 8.5 Tails I thought was pretty interesting. Can also be a commander, but a 2/2 for 2 that does a pseudo Mother of Runes thing. It protects your stuff from white stuff and can make other stuff white stuff. So it's a slow workaround to have a second Mother of Runes sort of effect, which I thought was pretty sweet. Then Leonin Relic Warder, which is Banisher Priest for enchantments and artifacts. 2-drop 2/2. Pretty good. Then Flicker Wisp, because it's one of the best 3-drops in white in Death and Taxes ever. And then Bygone Bishop I thought was really sweet too, because every creature except for a few of them costs 3 or less. So why not investigate, make some clues, and have a card draw engine built into our deck already? It just makes sense. Aven Mind Sensor is not Aven Mind Sensor. Remember, it is Glow Rider, another Thalia effect, because we also have Vryn Wingmare, which is the 3rd Thalia effect. So when we can't have 4 Thalias, we can have 3 things that are a lot like Thalia, and that's awesome. Eldrazi Displacer. If we're making a ton of mana with Nykthos, we can use a bunch of it to activate Eldrazi Displacer a bunch. I mean, we obviously have to make the colorless, but still, I mean, this is a good mana sink to have, and it lets us blink our Stoneforge Mystics, it lets us blink our Flicker Wisp to blink other stuff. We're also playing Restoration Angel, which we can blink as well. So, abusing Enter the Battlefield effects, since we can't play 4 Flicker Wisp, we play Eldrazi Displacer, and we play Restoration Angel, and we have more consistency to our deck doing what we want it to do. And then Mentor of the Meek, whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters battlefield, you pay 1 and draw a card. So if we count the creatures that have power 2 or less, there's at least 20 of them. We're pretty close to it. So that's pretty solid. Vryn Wingmare we just talked about. Thalia we talked about. We have a bunch of stuff that has this effect, where creatures your opponent controls enter the battlefield tap. This also hits their lands, which is sweet for their non-basics. Intrepid Hero, interesting addition. A 3-drop 1/1, which is pretty bad, but you could tap it to destroy something with 4 power or greater, which is actually really good, I think, in this format. If somebody is trying to get bigger than you can with their creatures, you just start taking out their guys, which is pretty solid. And in a deck where we're playing one-ofs, that's a good one to have. Banisher Priest, of course we know what that does. If you don't, 3-drop that exiles something, Oblivion Ring something till it leaves play, basically. Mirror Crusader, really, really good. We have a bunch of equipment to attach to it. It's great in Legacy and in Modern and Death and Taxes. Then Eidolon of Rhetoric, just stops people from being able to cast another spells. It's another Aethersworn Canonist effect, which is pretty good. It also has 4 toughness, which is not irrelevant. We don't have a lot of toughness in this deck, so that's a pretty solid blocker in addition to being pretty annoying. Then Recruiter of the Guard is great in Legacy, Death and Taxes. Allows us to fetch out a lot of our guys. Most of our deck we can target with Recruiter of the Guard. We could start the Stoneforge Mystic chain if we would like to. We can even blink it with Eldrazi Displacer or Flicker Wisp and continue fetching out creatures, which is pretty good. And then Breemaz. Everyone knows Breemaz. Probably the biggest body in our deck as far as our 3-drops and smaller go. So it's a good relevant blocker. It's a good attacker. You can equip it up. It's just another good, solid attacking and blocking creature to have. That also creates tokens for Skullclamp. Windborne Muse, a 4-drop with flying. Creatures can attack you unless their controller pays 2 for every 1 attacking you. Another way to slow down our opponents, which is what this is all about, is just to slow down our opponents till their game is moving at a turtle's pace, at least when it comes to them affecting you in many cases. And then Thought-Knot Seer. I'm not sure how great this is going to be, but I thought as a good 4-drop that we can cast pretty reliably. We have a lot of colorless mana makers. It's pretty disruptive, and an honorary hate bear, I gotta say. So we're going to try it out. And then Resto, I talked about, another blink effect. So we have Resto, Eldrazi Displacer, Flicker Wisp, to blink our Stoneforge and our other stuff that we need to utilize for the Enter the Battlefield stuff. Archangel of Tithes, another taxation on opponents attacking you, which is good. If these effects will stack too, so if we have the Windborne Muse and this guy or girl and in play, it's going to be hard for our opponents to attack us, which is pretty good. And then we have Solemn Simulacrum, which is another thing we could blink with Eldrazi Displacer and all that other stuff to search out basic lands. And then when it dies, we get to draw a card, which is pretty good. I think a good, solid, very utility creature, very effective. It's just a blocker when we need it to be, and we get to draw a card, so it's pretty effective. Then we have Linvala, which doesn't allow our opponents to activate abilities of their creatures, which is awesome. Another hateful sort of card that doesn't see play in Death and Taxes in conventional formats because it's too expensive mana-wise, but I think it's pretty good in this deck. And then we have Loxodon Gatekeeper, which is, I think, the 3rd or 4th thing that makes our opponent's stuff come into play tapped, which I think is pretty sweet. This is one that I came up with. I thought would be really interesting. The Oketra the True from Amonkhet. 4 mana, 3/6 God with double strike and indestructible, so it's hard as hell to get rid of. And it can't attack or block unless you control at least 3 other creatures, which we are playing like 40 creatures, so we're going to have 3 others, hopefully. And we have Nykthos, and this is where we're going to get really cute. If we get Nykthos online, we can dump a metric butt ton of mana into this thing and make all of the warriors. So I thought this synergized pretty well in our deck, and is a good way to have a good mana sink when we're trying to tax our opponents out of the game and making spells harder to cast and stuff. Having a creature like this that allows us to use our mana regardless, I thought was awesome. So I think that'll play really well. We also have the Monument having a similar effect, creating tokens. So the more tokens we can make for Skullclamp, the better. And I didn't want to dedicate half my deck to being a token synergy deck, but having a bunch of cards in it that work well in the deck anyway that happen to produce tokens, I think is awesome. So I think that'll work out really well. And another newer one is the Angel of Condemnation. This is another flicker effect on a stick. You can tap 2 and white, tap it, exile target creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So it's literally Flicker Wisp ability on a stick, or it's Banisher Priest ability on a stick for a 4 mana 3/3 with Flying and Vigilance, which is pretty sweet. You can attack with it and activate it, which is great. And I think having this as yet another blink effect and another like removal spell on a stick is pretty solid. I think really good in a format like this. And then we have Spelltithe Enforcer, which I didn't know this card existed, but pretty solid. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, they sacrifice a permanent unless they pay 1 mana. So it's like another pseudo Thalia effect. If they don't want to sack anything, everything's going to cost 1 more for them. It's also a 3/3, which is an okay body for a 5-drop, but still pretty good toward the top of our curve. And then at the very, very tip top of the curve, as far as creatures go, we have Revelark, which I think is great. Recurring any number of the creatures in your deck, 2 of them, is really solid when it dies, or you can evoke it, and it's a good body, and it fits well and synergizes well with this deck. And then we have Sun Titan, which again, another way to recur your creatures that are smaller. over and over again if you get to attack with it, which if you're attacking with this a lot, you're going to win the game. Outside of that, we have a removal package. We have Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, and Condemn, which is like our third bad Swords to Plowshares. Then we have Council's Judgment, which is really cool because I never got to play any Conspiracy. I never got to play this card in a multiplayer format, only in 1v1 Legacy. And in Legacy, it's amazing. It'll be really interesting if you try to cast this and vote for an opponent's permanent, and then the other opponents of yours vote for different stuff, which is really, really funny, and I think going to be a lot of fun, and just an effective removal spell. And then we have Aura of Silence, which seems like every white deck in EDH has this card. It just slows down your opponent's enchantments and is a disenchant on a stick for free, which is really cool. Very effective, very utilitarian and usable. We are playing one Aether Vial, and then I went over the equipment. We have Jitte, Skullclamp, Sword of Fire and Ice, Sword of Light and Shadow, and Batterskull. So we have 5 targets for Stoneforge to find. We're also playing a Ghostly Prison, another taxation on opponents attacking you. So stackable effects with like that, with like Ghostly Prison plus Archangel of Tithes plus Windborn Muse. Nobody's going to be able to attack you, which is great. Defense Grid makes it so your opponents aren't playing on your turn. During each player's turn, every other player's stuff costs 3 more. Pretty good in this sort of loose lockdown sort of thing. And then we have Crackdown, which I thought was pretty sweet and probably going to be effective. Non-white creatures with power 3 or greater don't untap. So if you're playing against somebody playing some sort of green sort of stompy go wide deck, or playing just bigger, more effective creatures than yours, they're not going to untap. And if you have any of the big Thalia effects that make them come into play tapped, well, their creatures are basically useless. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then, of course, Crucible and Dusk Till Dawn was the only sweeper I put in the deck. This leaves your guys alive and can be a one-sided board wipe when you need it to be. And then Dawn, you get to recur that stuff. This is really good in the sideboard of Modern Death and Taxes. I've enjoyed it quite a bit, so I thought it would be good. You kind of generally want a sweeper effect if you have access to it in EDH, from what I am told, as a dude that doesn't play EDH, so I thought that was probably the best one to start with. But that's pretty much it. That's the deck. I think I got close to something pretty playable. If you guys have any ideas, or if I miss anything, or something just doesn't look right in here, let me know in the comments down below, please. I don't play EDH a lot. If you've seen similar decks, or have played with or against Thalia in Commander, let me know, and make some recommendations. I'm absolutely open to it. Either way, though, that's all I've got. Also, a reminder, if you haven't yet, be sure to check out, I'll link it down here at the bottom. We're doing a giveaway. I hit 100 subscribers and monetized my channel, so I thought I'd give a little back and give away a Invocation Spell Pierce. And you could watch the video to find out how to enter. It's pretty easy, so I'll link that here. If you haven't yet, check that out. And like I said, like, comment, subscribe. I'll put a link up top in one of these corners so you could check it out and subscribe. And I'd look forward to hearing from all of you. Let me know what you guys think. And maybe I'll play some EDH. Maybe I'll build this deck. Who knows? Either way, guys, I will talk to you again very soon.